Our word of the week is record schedule. A record schedule is a document that tells you how long to keep specific types of records and tells you what should happen to those records. Records support and document our work. They help us to protect the rights and interests of citizens and help us document the policies the government has developed and implemented. Records keep our world moving. They help us track the work that's been done and the money that's been spent. Records help us plan ahead, and they help us respond in times of crisis. In order to have the information we need when we need it, we must have a plan that allows us to identify, manage, and retain records for the right amount of time. In the U.S. federal government, all records must have a record schedule, and all record schedules are reviewed and approved by the National Archives and Records Administration. A record schedule tells us how long each type of record is to be retained, and it tells us whether the records will be destroyed someday or transferred to the National Archives to be retained forever. An approved record schedule tells us how long we must keep records to support the agency's work, to protect legal rights and interests, and to document our history. Record schedules help us make sure that everyone in the agency is retaining records for the same amount of time, and they help us ensure that future generations will have access to the information they need to understand our part in history. In the U.S. federal government, we use two main types of record schedules. The General Record Schedules, or GRS, cover common administrative and housekeeping records. Individual agencies also have their own unique agency-specific record schedules. The General Record Schedules are created and approved by the National Archives for use by all federal agencies. In the GRS, you'll find schedules for general housekeeping and administrative records, the kinds of things you would expect most agencies to have. Agencies across the federal government use the GRS, and that helps us make sure that our retention of these records is consistent. The General Record Schedules cover administrative records like budgets, personnel files, travel, basic contracts, building maintenance, emergency planning, and security. In the GRS, you'll also find records related to payroll and accounting, as well as motor vehicle maintenance, telecommunications, mail and package delivery, property disposal, and many other common types of records that support our day-to-day operations. Of course, in addition to general administrative activities, government agencies do many different types of work. Each agency has its own unique mission and its own specific programs, and each agency will have records that directly support and document those programs. We call those program records or mission records. Those records are covered by agency-specific record schedules that are created by each agency and reviewed and approved by the National Archives. You can see the unique mission and work of an agency reflected in its agency-specific schedule. So the program records you'll find in the Environmental Protection Agency's schedules will be different from those at the U.S. Mint, or the Department of Interior, or Department of Education. You can start to identify your own agency-specific mission records by looking at the activities and the programs that make your organization unique. For example, if you look at the schedules for the National Park Service, you'll find program records documenting park policies and facilities, and records tracking plants and animals. When you look at the schedules for the National Weather Service, you'll find program records focused on the work that agency does to forecast, track, and communicate weather patterns and events. While the content of each record schedule does vary from agency to agency and from one group of records to another, most schedules have the same basic elements. For each type of record, or record series, you'll find a title and a description. The title usually reflects what the records are called in the office, and the description helps you to identify how those records are used and what kinds of material might be included in a typical set of records. The record schedule also tells the disposition of the records. Disposition is the ultimate fate of the records. It's what should happen to the files. In this example, we have temporary records. A temporary record is one that will ultimately be destroyed when it's no longer needed to support the work of the agency or to protect someone's rights and interests. Disposition is usually made up of two different parts. The first part, the cutoff, determines when a file will close and when its retention clock will start. In this example, a file is cut off when the project it documents is completed or canceled. After the cutoff, the file's retention clock starts ticking. In this example, we would close the file when the project is completed, and we retain the project history file for 10 years after that cutoff date. Here's another example. We have a series title and description, and in this case we're going to cut off or close those files at the end of the fiscal year, then destroy the files 6 years later. Some record schedules will include transfer instructions. In this example, we have permanent records. Permanent records have significant historical or other value, and permanent records will ultimately be transferred to the National Archives to be retained forever. In this example, we have two sets of transfer instructions. First, the files are transferred to a federal records center for storage. Later, the files will reach their final disposition and they'll become part of the National Archives. Your agency will use a combination of the general record schedules and your agency-specific schedules. Your records, whether they're created in paper form, as email messages, as electronic documents, data sets, or 3D models, all need to be managed according to the appropriate record schedule. Schedules are created for all record formats, so you will find record schedules that apply to your electronic documents, information systems and websites, and photographs, audio and video files, and of course, paper. When you need to find your own agency's record schedules, there are several key places to look. First, take a look at your organization's intranet or website. Many agencies will post their schedules online. You might also check your orders, policies, or directives because many records manuals and record schedules are issued that way. Your agency's records officer and network of records contacts will also be able to help you. And you can find both the general record schedules and a collection of agency record schedules on NARA's website at archives.gov. If you'd like to learn more about creating, applying, and updating record schedules, or if you'd like more information about available records management training, visit us online at archives.gov.